Hi, my name is Deynum, and I'm making an office-themed roguelike called Devlog, but this isn't actually what the game currently looks like. This is. That's because 4 months ago I decided to completely start from scratch, going from a semi-functioning game to literally a single room. So in my journey of getting back to a somewhat functional game, today we're going to be creating the first floor of our office, fittingly called the basement. In this devlog we'll go over the art and the choices I made to make the floor look the way it does, the underlying code that turns individual rooms into procedurally generated floors, and the room builder I made to heavily reduce the time it takes to make new rooms. And we're actually going to be starting with that last one, because previously every single room in the game was drawn by hand, literally pixel by pixel. This was a tedious process that would often take hours just to end up with a rather bland room. So to speed up the process, we're going to be slicing the rooms up into tiles. This way we can use Unity's built-in tile system to create any room of any size we want without having to draw them manually. However, just making a tile map, importing it into Unity and drawing a room by hand is still incredibly tedious. So instead we're going to be using something called rule tiles. These are tiles that change their appearance based on their surroundings. The only thing I have to do is define a bunch of rules for when tiles should change their appearance and draw the shape of the room I want. Unity handles the rest. And although all of this, and I'm not kidding, took me 3 days to figure out, we're not done yet. Because this isn't a room, it's a box. Rooms have doors or openings or some kind of way to get in, so we need the ability to add doors to our rooms. I'd already made a bunch of door designs for the old game, including animations, but I didn't feel like they fit the current game anymore. So I spent about a day making these 3 door designs for the 3 different angles that the door will be viewed in. I then imported those into Unity, dragged them into the scene, and realised that placing these in the exact right position by hand probably wasn't a good idea. So I had to write a piece of code that automatically snaps each door to the same grid that we draw the rooms on. However, figuring out how to do this took me yet another day to figure out. Anyone telling you I'm a good game developer is straight up lying. But to my credit, we can now actually make rooms. They're just completely empty, and the only way to make them not be empty is by adding a bunch of objects to our game. So I decided to make one last room by hand, filled with a bunch of different objects that I would then be able to place separately in any room I want. Now, I'm not going to go over every single object I've made in this video, but I will point out a few interesting or challenging ones, like the printer, an object that has been in the game for a while. There have been 2 previous designs that I've used, but both of them were quite modern and squeaky clean, and a basement just isn't the kind of place you'd find newly acquired technology. So instead I started looking at some pictures of old printers, and I noticed a lot of them were beige, so I tried making a beige printer. It did not look good at all. Someone in my Discord server even pointed out it looks a lot like a sandcrawler from Star Wars, and they're not wrong, it really does. And after trying yet another design, also beige, I decided that it just wasn't the right colour. So I made a bright purple design, not because I was ever going to use purple, but to get an idea of what I wanted it to look like, you know, separate from colour. And after giving it the right colours, I'm actually extremely happy with how it looks. It looks dirty and dated, but not completely ancient. Just a machine that got replaced with a better one upstairs, and so they send the old one down. But that's just one out of a dozen objects I need to make, so let's go a little quicker, shall we? I made 2 tables that stand on either side of the printer, one with paper, another one with files and boxes. And if you're wondering where those boxes came from, well, there's a bunch on the floor right here. One of them is even open to reveal the files inside. But boxes aren't just on the floor, they're also inside a bunch of cabinets standing against the wall, each filled to the brim with boxes, binders, files and papers. There's also a hole in the floor, for no particular reason, but at least now we can start importing some of these into Unity, and after we've done that and dragged them into the scene, we can actually attach the same placement script we used for the doors to get them in the exact right position. And now we can place our object anywhere we want, in any room we want. Using this, we can make the room that took me 25 hours to create outside of Unity and make it inside of the game in a matter of minutes. And it looks pretty good, except for the cabinets, because all of them are identical right now, since there's only one cabinet object in the game. Now, I could randomize the entire sprite using different cabinet designs that we made, but that would only give us 3 options, which isn't going to be nearly enough for such a common object. Most rooms are going to have more than one cabinet, cabinets. So instead I separated the cabinets into individual shelves. Each shelf will then be randomized to create a new cabinet. Now every time we decide to drag a cabinet into the scene, it'll have completely different contents. But although the cabinets look good, the walls behind them are still incredibly boring. So I'll spend a couple of hours making some wall tiles that we can use to spruce them up a little bit. You know, make them feel old and worn. Then in the game I can simply drag those onto the wall to make them look a lot more interesting. The only issue now is that due to all the objects we just placed, the left hand side of our screen is a complete mess. So I created a simple script that goes through all the objects in the scene and places them in their correct category. Now they're all both attached to the room object and organized by type, which is just absolutely perfect. Okay, so at this point I thought I had enough to start making some actual rooms. I was dreadfully wrong. Turns out I did not make nearly enough different objects, and I didn't make anything for the bottom wall of rooms, so it just looks really bland. The first object I made to fix this was a backwards cabinet, of which you can only see the top shelf. It's not the best thing ever, but it's something. I also made a fallen over cabinet, because in a place like this that would probably be a common occurrence. But I really struggled to come up with any more things to put on the bottom wall, since you can only really see things that are either really tall or far enough away from the wall to be visible. And if you're now expecting me to tell you that I did come up with a bunch more things to put there, you're wrong. I didn't, because I genuinely couldn't come up with anything. So if you've got any suggestions, please let me know. I am all ears. However, one thing I did do to make it all look a bit less bland was to add some slight bits of detail to the floor. You know, tiny puddles, marks, and just dirtiness in general. Although I still feel like the floor is just way too empty, these slight imperfections do help a lot. In comparison, this is what it looked like before, painfully flat, and now it actually looks kind of interesting. For now though, we've got more rooms to make and some new objects to introduce, like the file cabinet. This is an object we've had in the game for a while now, and I've always really liked the way it looks. And even though I did make some slight modifications, like making it a bit smaller and adding some more detail, the overall design has stayed the same. However, this time instead of manually opening some of the drawers, I let the game randomly decide which ones to open and which ones to close, just to add some variety, like we did with the cabinets. Next up we have the desk, which is also an object that has been in the game for a long time. It was actually one of the very first things I ever drew for this game, if you don't count the old version of the game where the player is a robot for some reason. But needless to say, it's gone through a lot of redesigns, from big and bulky to small and rounded. However, I gotta say, I never really liked any of those designs. They were always either too detailed or not detailed enough. But this time I think I nailed it. I absolutely love the way it looks, especially the computer. Previously we had a boring black brick, but now we've got a dated beige computer, complete with wires and everything. I also made a version of the desk that faces the other way, which although not as good, still looks amazing. Anyways, with these two new objects added, I was able to create yet another room. This one has a bit of a different feel to it, due to having less cabinets in it, but I actually really like it. It's the kind of workplace I would imagine being in a literal basement. You know, dated, dark, and grimy. Okay, so at this point I decided to just start making a bunch of different rooms. You know, one with 2 doors, another one with just a single door, a really big one with 4 doors, and so on. In the end, I made 13 different rooms, which took me just under 2 hours. And although that sounds like a lot of time, it's actually really fast, considering that previously it would take me about 30 minutes to make a single room, and 13 of them would have taken me well over 6 hours. So I'd say that the time making a room builder has more than paid off. Okay, so at this point we've reached a part of the video where I need to talk about something very boring with little to no interesting footage to show you, because it's time to start talking about procedural generation. Luckily I've already made 2 videos on the topic and I feel like I've covered it fairly well, so we're just going to keep it short. Basically, the way we generate floors is by dividing the game up into cells. Each cell has the possibility of having a room in it. If we place a room in a cell, it affects all the cells around it. So if a room has a door on its left, then the cell next to it has to have a room with a door on the right. And we just keep doing this until we've got a filled-in map. Now, luckily, I already programmed all of this 9 months ago, which means we can just take that. Is it good code? No, absolutely not. It's terrible. But it also took me about 2 weeks to write, and I'm not smart enough to figure out how to write it better. So I'll just run it and fix any problems that come up. Wait, what? Now obviously this is recorded afterwards. I'm not actually surprised, but it worked first time. For context, this is a 500-line mess of code that was written in a completely different project. There is no world where this should have worked. I ran it purely to fix the errors that would inevitably pop up in Unity. Things like missing scripts, but no, it just worked. If you're not a game developer or a programmer, this might seem normal, but trust me, it isn't. I have written scripts that have just 5 lines of code and I still get errors. This is just, I'm at a loss for words, literally. I have written a script and I still don't know. This is me improvising. I genuinely, this is weird. So weird. Now obviously not everything worked. For example, the doors were still useless, so we couldn't actually move from room to room, but all the rooms were there. They were in their right position, we just couldn't move between them. But about an hour later, after writing the missing scripts, we actually got our guy walking between rooms. Guys, sorry, I feel like you're missing the thing here. It worked. For this 500-line mess worked first time. I'm going completely off script, but I just need to say that. Oh my god. But anyway, it's working. Now, technically, he's still walking through closed doors because we only have the closed door sprite, but still, it looks really good. I also just love how it all looks. All the objects, the little details, the general vibe. The only real thing missing are enemies. So my next goal is to add those, which I'm going to be doing in the next devlog. However, I am still in desperate need of ideas for those enemies, so if you've got any suggestions, leave a comment, join the Discord, or if you get the chance, I also stream on Twitch, where I'm probably going to be designing some of these enemies live, so come say hi if you get the chance. Thank you so much to all these tier 2 channel members for their support, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.